How's it going, everybody? And welcome back to our Nexus dashboard series. As promised, I have brought on Nexus 5 and Nexus 6, and I've gotten all of the other devices online. What I'm going to do with you guys now is bring on Nexus 5K and Nexus 6K, get them stood up. They're going to obviously go through the reboot process and stuff like that, but we're going to go through that, which is basically you can add switches to a fabric that's already there fairly easily, and I'm about to show you what that looks like. So I'm going to go back over here to the data center. I'm going to click over here on actions and say add switches. This one here is 10.255.1.95 through 96, and NDFC and my password. Max hops is going to be 1 or 0, and I'm not going to reserve the config. Discover switches. It should be able to find them pretty easily. There it goes. I'm going to select these guys and say add switches. Now, there will be, obviously, go ahead and bring this down just a touch so you can see this. The configs did get saved, so we are in good shape there. Yeah, I saved the config. So they'll get added, and what I will do is I will wait for the progress line to finish, then I'll close it out, and what we'll have to do then is just wait for the switches to come back online. So that'll take probably 10-15 minutes, something like that, to do its thing, and then we'll be in good shape. So there we go. So that will trigger. I'm just waiting for the progress line to wrap up, and as soon as it does, I'll go ahead and close out this window. It usually takes a okay, there it goes. I'm gonna go ahead and click on close, and now we have these two. They're added. We will have to go in there and modify their roles and then do the VPC configuration, but for right now I'm just going to let this ride right here, and I'm going to mute while they reboot. Alright, well, it took a few minutes for the switches to be reachable after they rebooted. So what I'm going to go ahead and do now is I'm going to set Nexus 5 and 6 up, set their role to be leaf. Click OK for that. And then I'm going to come over here, Nexus 5K. So if you want to do a VPC pairing, you select one of the switches, come over here to actions, and then you set VPC pairing, and then you select the other switch. So these switches are connected and have the same role. So we can go ahead and click on save, and then they're good to go there. So now that I've done that, we have some pending configs. So I'm going to go to actions, recalculate and deploy, and I'm going to give this a couple of minutes to generate all the config. So this is going to take a little bit of doing in order for it to get everything operational. So none of the other switches should have any configuration modifications to them. So we'll just give it a little bit of time. We have okay, so the spines will have some to join Nexus 5 and 6 to the rest of the fabric. But if we look at Nexus 6, we can see a lot of configuration, a lot of features are going to get enabled. We'll see that the VPC domain is set, and you'll notice that the VPC pure keep alive destination is the loopback address. And I've done this on purpose because I don't have, I'm not doing a management port to management port pure keep alive, and I don't have a dedicated interface for the management interface. So I'm using loopback to loopback, and this is the way I recommend it anyway. In order for this to work, you actually have to have underlay routing working in order for this to work. So just keep that in mind. I'm going to click on close, and I'm going to click on deploy all. This will take a couple of minutes to do its thing, and once it's done, we'll be in pretty good shape. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this back up so you guys can see the pop-ups, and I'm going to mute until it's done. Okay, so our deployment is good to go with that. I'm going to go ahead and click on close. So we have our configuration squared away. The next stage for our process is to come over here, and we have a VPC that we need to set up on 5 and 6 down to switch 14 on E111. So that's going to be our next step. And then we're going to configure switch 14. And so in order to do that, I'm going to go to Nexus 5. I'm going to dive into him real quick. And then I'm going to come over here to interfaces. And I'm going to go ahead and say actions, create interface. This is going to be a VPC. And then the pairing is going to be 5 and 6. The VPC ID, in this case here, I'm going to say is 11 because we're going to be using interface 11. I can come in here and type in ETH111. And then if I can either do one of two things. I can either add E111 here, or I can do config mirroring. So it'll automatically populate the interface there. The port channel mode is going to be active. We're not going to do BPDU guard. The MTU is going to be the default. Speed will be auto. The trunk allowed list, I'm going to go ahead and just do 10 through 11, because that's all I really need to have anyway. We could do a native VLAN if you'd like to, but I'm not going to mess with that. And if there's any specific configuration at the port channel level I wanted to add in, that would be the point in time to do it. So I'm going to go ahead and click on save, and then I'm going to click on deploy. So we'll see the configuration here, 13 lines of config. It's going to remove that config, create the channel group, and all that good stuff goes along with it, and then we'll do a VPC 11. So I'm going to go ahead and close that out. I'm going to go ahead and deploy config. That'll take just a couple of moments to deploy, and then I'll wait a minute for this to get rolled out, and once it does, we'll be in good shape. Usually takes about a minute and change to do it. Okay, that was pretty quick. I'm going to go ahead and close out of this guy here, and we'll see the VPC 11 is up. We have a configuration stanza in place. What I'm going to go do is bring up this side here, switch 14. I'm going to go ahead and let's go back over here to the topology, pull this guy up, and we're going to go in here, and I'm going to do a host name is going to be switch 14. So I have interface range gig 1/2 through 3. I'm going to do a switch port mode or switch port trunk encapsulation .1q switch port mode of trunk. I'm going to do a channel protocol is LACP. Channel group will be 14 mode of active, and then that will bring my port channel online. I'm just going to wait for the interfaces to get themselves figured out. Actually, I need to go back underneath. I'm still going to see duplex mismatches, I think. Let me go back underneath those guys. We're going to do a no negotiation auto. Duplex full. And then I'm going to go and create VLAN 10, name VLAN 10, and then VLAN 11, like so. So I'm going to do interface range gig 0/1 through, I'm sorry, 0 through 1. Do a switch port mode access, and switch port access VLAN 11 spanning tree port fast. Hit the up arrow a couple times, and then we're going to do 2 and 3. 2 through 3. Switch port mode access, switch port access VLAN 10. And then we'll do a spanning tree port fast. I'm going to save the config on that box, and we should be good to go there. If I show MAC address table dynamic, we should see show interface status. Okay, so those guys are all good. I did configure server 43, 44, and all that stuff that have already been configured. So if I look at 43 and I do a show IP route, if I do a ping to 10.1.11.1, hopefully everything works the way I expect it to. Let me just double check some stuff on switch 14. I'm going to show interface trunk. Okay, so it's forwarding, show MAC address table dynamic. Okay, so I'm loading traffic in, but nothing from Nexus 5 and 6 yet. So on 5, go ahead and log in here. We're going to do a show VPC. The VPC is up. Oh, that's because I don't have the VLANs created yet. That explains that. I forgot about that part. So what I'm going to go ahead and do now, because I'm running into that issue, on here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to close out at this level. Then on the VRFs, I'm going to click on the VRF, dive into it a little bit deeper. I'm going to say VRF attachments, and you'll notice 5 and 6 are detached. So here and here, I'm going to go actions. I'm going to say quick attach, confirm. It's going to grab VLAN 70. And then networks, I'm going to go ahead and grab these guys here. I'm going to say actions, multi-attach. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to have to grab 5 and 6 because they're not attached yet. I'm going to go ahead and click on next, next, and then save. And then it will, on 5 and 6, if we go to line here, we're going to see the VPC profile for the VRF, and then we're going to see the profiles for DC1 VLAN 10, and then the profile for DC1 VLAN 11. And I'm going to go ahead and close. I'm just going to go ahead and say deploy all. It's going to stand all of that up for me. So that will be the additional step that we're going to have to do in order to get operational. That'll take a moment or two, so I'm just going to go ahead and mute until it's done. Alright, so the configuration process is done. I'm going to click on close. I can close out of this, and I can go back to switches, and everything looks good there. I'm going to go back to the topology and pull up this guy here. The VPC is, there we go, so we have 10 and 11 are allowed to go across. Everything's looking good there. We go to switch 14, hit the up arrow. I'm learning additional MAC addresses. So I'm learning the gateway MAC, and I also learned the gateway MAC for both SPIs. So VLAN 10 and for VLAN 11. So if I come back over here to this guy and I hit the up arrow, I should get a ping response from that, which I do. And then if I hit the up arrow and I do, let's say I wanted to be able to talk to 45. So let's ping something on my local segment. I can talk to him. Now let's go to something across the line. I'm going to talk to 41, which is sitting behind Nexus 4. That works. And let's go ahead and talk to 31, which is sitting behind Nexus 3. And then let's talk to 35, which is sitting on switch 13. That's all sitting inside the same VLAN. Now let's take this a step further. And since we have that communication in here, let's go to 36, but that's in VLAN 10. So I'm talking to Nexus 3 attached to switch 13. That might take a couple extra pings. There it goes. Perfect. Now if I come up here to Nexus 5 and I do a show MAC address table dynamic, I'm going to start seeing a bunch of additional MAC addresses. and I see 10.1.1.2, 10.1.1.1, and then if I come over here to Nexus 3 and I do admin, do show MAC address table dynamic, you're going to see 10.1.1.4 and 10.1.1.1. Now, what's going to be interesting is if we come over here to 5 and 6, so I do a show IP interface brief, I'm going to have a couple of loopbacks. So I'm going to have loopback 0 and loopback 1. If I do a show run interface NVE1, loopback 1 is my source interface. So if I look at show run interface loopback 1, what you're going to get underneath this one here is going to be this IP address here, 10.1.1.4. And if I log into Nexus 6 and do a show run interface loopback 1, you're going to see 10.1.1.4. Now you might say, how come I see both? How come I see the same IP address as a /32 host route on both devices? And the reason why you see that is because this is how you have to configure Anycast VTEP, the VXLAN tunnel endpoint. And what is basically happening is on the remote side, 3 will see 4 and 4 will see 4. Go ahead and log into 4 real quick. Show MAC address table dynamic. So you see 4 right there. What's happening here is by having the same IP address mapped to both switches, both VPC pairs or members, means you can send traffic to either one, Nexus 5 or Nexus 6, and they both have access to the downstream devices. That is the reason for that. So you can ECMP the traffic to it. So if you send traffic to Nexus 5 on one for one endpoint and the Nexus 6 for the other one, it's still going to get to where it's supposed to go. That is the reason for that. So that is the reason why they go that direction with the operations. So it's a pretty straightforward config, operationally speaking. But that is the point there. So let me do a little bit more of a verification process here. So let's go to Nexus 3. I'm going to do a show NVE peers. And I'm going to do term with 150. Now, this NVE peers is kind of a cool command because this is basically telling you who you have a VXLAN tunnel with. So I've got 10.1.1.4, which happens to be Nexus 4, and then 10.1.1.4, which is going to be Nexus 5 and 6. And the reason why this is important to know is if this wasn't happening here, you wouldn't have any VXLAN communication. So the router MAC, this right here, if we were to look into it, this is actually the MAC address of the layer 3 BNI is how this comes into play. So if I was to look at the show run, do a show IP interface brief VRF DC1 prod, do a show interface VLAN 70. This is the MAC address of the SPI for our layer 3 VNI. Now if I come over here to 4 and I do a show interface VLAN 70, I can see that this is 5000 there. Same thing with 5, show interface VLAN 70. We see this guy right here. If we go back over to 3, that tracks. Well, in this case here, we're seeing 6. 6 is basically who we're peering to. So show interface VLAN 70. We see 6, right? So if I do a show NVE peers from here, I'm going to see 3 and 4. Term with 150. So that's essentially what's going on there. We have a 6-minute that this has been up. If I do a show BGP, L2 VPN, EVPN summary, I'm receiving a bunch of routes. I see a bunch of communication going back and forth. We see our ARP tables. Things are getting populated. Everybody's pretty happy with what they've got configuration-wise. And we're operationally doing exactly what we expect the traffic to do. So everybody's in good spirits at this point in the network. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the high-level pieces in order to standing up a VXLAN fabric at the leaf level. The next video, I'm going to go ahead and stand up 7 and 8, Cat AK 15 and 16. I'm going to get them configured, or get them booted up and we're going to go through the exact same process with the onboarding process for 7 and 8. The only difference is we're going to change the role to border. They're not going to be in a VPC. And what I'm going to go do is I'm going to set up external connections on each one of them to talk to Cat AK 15 and 16. And Cat AK 15 and 16, the reason why I'm leveraging them is because in order for Nexus Dashboard to join a switch from a monitoring perspective to at least have a device in a fabric, you need to have something that the Nexus Dashboard can actually reach out to and authenticate to. And what will end up happening is we will configure Cat AK 15 and 16 manually via the CLI to form eBGP peerings to Nexus 7 and 8, and that will allow us to get communication to the rest of the environment. That is the whole purpose of what we're trying to accomplish here. Then they'll be able to talk out. We have what would be considered our data center edge here, and then we're going to have our campus edge. We're going to have our WAN edge here. So that's essentially what we're going to be building out. So if you guys have any questions on that, feel free to let me know. But this is essentially what you would go about doing. Now, ironically, if you didn't want to use routers and you wanted to use firewalls, for example, if you wanted to throw some Palo Alto firewalls in, completely legitimate design, and I do that on a regular basis. However, the last time I checked, you can't add a Palo firewall to Nexus Dashboard. So I can test it out to see if it's going to work. I don't believe it's going to, but it would be kind of cool if it could, because then I would be able to form an eBGP peering with it, and then I'd be able to do my routing towards it, and then we'd be able to go through a firewall. Now, what would normally end up happening here is, because of this caveat, there are people that I work with that have told me that they've gotten it working with Palo, that they've added it as like a service node and not as an external fabric. So I'm not 100% sure how they pulled that off, but they did. So if a customer came to me and said they wanted to do that, or they wanted to have firewalls as their egress point, I would tell them, okay, that's great. However, the way that Nexus Dashboard works, we won't be able to do that easily. It would take some working. I'd probably work with some folks in the back end to see if they can get that working. But what would end up happening is I would tell them, okay, well, the easy way for this to work would be to put another set of routers as your external fabric that you're going to peer to via BGP, and then north of that, we will put a firewall. Palo, Firepower, Checkpoint, Fortinet, whatever you want to throw in there, we would then do that. That would just be like my heads up. This is what I know I can do, and I've tested that out and it works out pretty well. I might add in some firewalling here down the road, but right now we're not at that point. So another thing to keep and to think about too while we're looking at this is, in most cases when you're having this type of a design, you would have dedicated connectivity to a firewall. Now, here's the interesting thing about this. Once you have a pair of switches deployed, right? You have them operational and everything is good to go. You don't have to keep the switch up to date and synchronized with Nexus Dashboard. I do have a couple of customers that have controller-based VXLAN fabrics deployed, and what they do, knowing the issues that can be incurred through Dashboard and the limitations of it, they have opted to not join everything to Nexus Dashboard. So essentially what they're doing is they have, I think it's 16 total switches, and then they have 2 additional switches, so it's an 18 switch VXLAN fabric. They take 2 switches. We never added them to the fabric through Dashboard. What we did is we configured them manually through the CLI, and we have them peering to the outside world. And that was the workaround, because they didn't want to deal with the complications of Dashboard. So there are ways of getting around it, and I did let them know, hey, there's no easy way of doing that. And I don't manage their environment on a regular basis. for that specific customer, they're more of a once a quarter, once every 6 months, they come to us with some sort of need, or they start using their hours that they've bought from us, and we implement something. So with that, what we end up doing is we have a dedicated pair of switches that we go that direction with. So it makes it easier for them to manage things, so they don't have to sit there and try to hack dashboard to do something that they want. They like the ability of doing everything else. And the cool thing about it, they never have to worry about screwing up on those two switches if they never got added to the fabric. The spines see them, but the rest of the fabric doesn't know that they're there. So you can't affect something through dashboard if dashboard doesn't know it's there. That's the whole point. And if there is anything, and that pair of switches does nothing more than route traffic in and out of the fabric. So there's a static default route that's learned and stuff like that, and it works out quite nicely. EBGP pairings to follow firewalls, everybody's happy. So that's just one of those caveats that we made, and that's kind of I wish there was an option, and like I said, I haven't tested it out yet. I could probably, as a matter of fact, let me go ahead and just go ahead and add a Palo. I'll just call this, we'll add, actually let me add 2. I'll just call it firewall, and then I'll do like 6 interfaces, and we'll change this to be telnet. So I'll stand up a couple of Palo firewalls, and I'll stand up one, see if I can get it to work, because I would genuinely like to be able to figure out a way to do it and not have it be some sort of convoluted, complicated issue to make it actually happen. So if you guys have any questions, leave a comment down below. If not, I'll catch you guys in the next video. Thanks for stopping by. If you haven't already done so, please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll catch all of you in the next video. Take it easy, everybody.